The present Ella Francis aunt, Miss Betty Peck's sister. Ella was Ella Peck. All right. They were courting, and it was one Sunday afternoon, and in that day and age we didn't have any televisions and any of these things, these machines you can play now that are just Ataris or something that are just going wild. I don't know what they are. Anyway, what the young people did in that day and age, usually the girls were educated in music, and they played the piano, and they all got around the piano, and they sang on Sunday afternoons when they had their dates. So Ella had been playing the piano in your front room up there. Her mother, Grandma Morgan, whom I remember, she was living when I was a young girl. Well, she lived until I was probably 14 or 15 or something like that, maybe 10 or 12, I forgot. But anyway, she was still living when I was a little girl. And so she was in the room that they called sort of the library, like, they had another room, a drawing room or something. And they were over there, Carol and Ella were in the parlor, and she'd been playing the piano. But they came over into the drawing room, and Mrs. Morgan, old Miss Morgan, Grandma Morgan, had gone out into the kitchen to get supper for Sunday evening. So to get some supper, and she was going to have Carol to stay eat with them. So they went over into what they called the drawing room or the library. And on the mantelpiece was this old Civil War relic. And she, just in fooling and playing and everything, she picked up the gun, and Cal was about 6'3" and a wonderful looking boy. His pictures were just marvelous. And she just was fooling around and just said, "Cal, I think I'll shoot you." And she picked up the Civil War relic, and it was loaded. And by golly, she did. And it went right in his temple.
Oh, my goodness.
And he sank right down by the fireplace, and she grabbed him. And yelled for her mother. She hollered for her mother to come. "Oh, come, Mother, something terrible has happened." And her mother ran in there, and Cal Oots died in Mrs. Morgan's arms. And it was a terrible tragedy. Oh, it was an awful tragedy. Because Aunt Jenny had just lost her other son 2 years before that.
Oh, dear.
And Uncle Charles had just died at Hayes Hotel. They said he died from alcoholic poisoning of the brain. Well, apoplexy or something. That's what they all say in that day and age. And the doctor, he went up there and was on a drinking thing, and they had horse day, and the court was going on, circuit court was going on, and the Jockey Alley, they all came, and traded the horses and all that stuff. And so Uncle Charles went up there, and he had died just 2 years before Cal had. So in 4 years' time, she lost her husband and 2 sons.
Did she raise the other one?
No, the other little boy had died in
That's
infancy.
right,
The other boy died in
okay.
infancy. So then after that, the doctor just told Aunt Jenny that she just had to get away. That she just couldn't stay there. Aunt Jenny was just practically prostrate because she just lost them all, see. Yeah. And with those tragic accidents and everything. So told her she had to get away. So Miss Figgett, who lives in Joe Wilson's house, Kyle Bolton owns it now. Yeah. That was the Figgett place. And Aunt Jenny and Miss Liza Figgett were great friends. And had been girls, raised up together and all that. So Miss Figgett told Aunt Jenny, Jenny, she said, "Let's go on a trip." Said, "You got some money?" And said, "I've got some money." Said, "Let's go on a trip." Said, "All those people have been going to Europe." Said, "Let's go to Europe."
Oh.
So, and Mama, of course, came up to Wayville, and Aunt Jenny said, "Now, Mag, Mama's mother, Mag, do you think I should go?" That's right where the airport is now. They tore down that house. It was a crime. It was a beautiful house. Roanoke City tore it down. Well, anyway, that's where my mother left as a bride. So anyway, Aunt Jenny says, "Well, I believe he'll go." Said, "I believe he'll do me good, I believe he'll go." Well, Aunt Jenny and Miss Figgett went to Europe, and they went to stay like 6 weeks, I think, and they stayed 6 months.
Oh.
Oh, they got over there, and they just loved it, and they just went all around. They went to all the countries. Okay. And when we were children, and when Oots was a little boy, he used to call her Aunt G. And he'd say, this was all at the time that I was born, and she'd be telling these tales, and everything. Because, see, Otha was 9 years older than I am, and Oots was 7 years older. It was a period of time that Mama didn't have any children. And then Marguerite was just 2 years older than I was next. And so Oots would go into Angel's room, Mama said, and he was a darling little boy. And he was just the prettiest baby and everything. And he'd go in there and he'd say, Angie, he said, when you went over the ocean, did you go this way and that way? He heard her talking about, being on the ocean, how rough it was.
Yeah.
3 weeks to go in that day and age on the ship.
Oh, yeah.
And she said Angie had excellent health. Never was sick hardly a day in her life. After she had typhoid fever in Richmond when she was a young girl, after the first Lydia had died, after her mother had died. And that her hands were sent them to the Catholic schools, to the convents, for their education, you see, to raise, the social graces and all the things. So Angie, he let them choose, and Grandmother chose Georgetown, and Angie chose Villa Maria in Richmond. So she was so ill with typhoid fever, and the second illness that she had until she died, she never was sick after that, was going over to Europe. And the doctor on the ship brought her out of 21 fainting spells. And she was so seasick, and he said, if I can get her through this one, I think she will live to get over here. Well, one reason they stayed so long was they knew they had to come back over that ocean. And the only way was on the ship. There were no airplanes. The only way was the ship. So they kept putting it off, and they still had some money. And they kept seeing things, and we'd go to Holland, and we'll stay 3 weeks, and we'll go to Italy, and we'll stay 3 weeks. And Germany, she was all over the whole place. Scotland, Italy, and she talked about, and in Scotland, that's her. And this is Sir Walter's house. This is Sir Walter's house. And this is where he wrote Ivanhoe. This is where he did this. Oh, I used to be fascinated by her stories. And so anyway, she stayed 3 weeks. She got over there on the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and Angie was a great big woman. I didn't take after. I didn't get any of her genes. She was a great big woman, great big buxom woman. Weighed about 200. She got over there on the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and she crawled around that glass thing. I didn't go there now. I have not been there. There was some kind of a glass dome-like thing that she explained to us. And she said when she got up there that she thought maybe she might break that thing in two, but she knew she had to get out. So she got on her hands and knees and crawled so that she could sort of hold to the railing. And she said that when she got down, when she got back over to America, when she got back to Virginia, to Willoma, she said she promised herself that she'd done these 3 things. And she said, I promised my good Lord if he would let me get back to Fincastle and to Willoma, to Culver Creek, that's where I want to live and die. She said that as a bride, and she did.
Oh.
She said, I promised my good Lord, I will never go up on any more towers. I will never go down in any more dungeons. She'd been down in the dungeon at St. Augustine, and she didn't like that. She said, I'll never go down in any more dungeons, and I will never cross any more oceans.
Oh.
So she didn't. Huh?
She was hoping they were going to
Build a bridge. Well, she didn't. Yes, she did live to see the bridge because my daddy built the bridge. Now, my father built. Oh, across the ocean. Oh, across the ocean. I thought we Catawba Creek. Well, she had to ford that creek all those years and everything. But my daddy built that bridge, and we forded it all the years that we were going to high school and everything. And my mother never knew when we left and we were going to grade school. She never knew whether we'd be home that night or not, because we had these spring storms and rains, and the creek would come down, and we'd get up and you couldn't ford the thing. And so Uncle Bowyer Haight would come out and he'd call Miss Bertha, I see the buggy going by with the children, but we've had that awful rain. So they might not get there tonight. They might have to turn back and come to the hotel. See, that's where we spent the night, was at Hayes Hotel. Right at Hayes Hotel.
Well, tell me, who built Hawthorne Hall?
Well, now, Harvey wasn't, yeah, that's right. So now, let me tell you, so I don't know, maybe that it is the ghost of all those going-ons or something. I don't know. Maybe, because he died right there. And, of course, then they brought his body back to Angel, to Willoma and everything.
She come out and let me see him one time. I've never seen him.
Never have seen him, huh?
Well, let me ask you this, lady. One of the Morgans was killed down that place, shot by a servant, accident among the honey. Do you know about that?
Well, that's Hans Bruce. That isn't a Morgan.
Oh, it was?
That's Hans Bruce. That's this boy's oldest brother.
Oh, it was?
See, Angel had the 3 children, that Willie, Hans Brew, and Calvin.
Yeah.
And that was Hans Brew. And their graves are right up there right at
He was shot
things there.
out from
He was shot out in the woods there. from in what the Flatwoods, what we call the Flatwoods, you see, that my father and mother owned, and that was Otha ended up with that. And then the children have that, I think, now, with Diamond Hill.
Yeah.
The three Coon children have that. And Otha said that he wanted that. When my mother and father died, he wanted that as his part of the estate. So we agreed to it because, I mean, he was the boy, and we agreed to it. So then that was his. And so we took money. Well, Hansbrew and Cal went to school in Fincastle, and out at the little dry run school, which is out where Ella Francis' house is down in the bottom there. It was called Dry Run School. And they went into Fincastle, to the school. And so they were going, I think, at Fincastle at that time. And, of course, they had the Negro school and the white school. And they would walk up and down the road, or sometimes they'd ride their ponies or horseback or something. So this Negro boy, they always did think that,
What was his name?
I don't know what his name was, I've forgotten, but they always did think that this Negro boy, he was about the age of Hansbrough and Cal, and they all would walk up or ride the horses and ponies up, that he had a grudge against Hansbrough. And
What do you know?
well, I don't know what it was about. I can't remember that. I mean, maybe Aunt Jenny didn't even remember. But anyway, they always thought that he had a grudge against Hansbrough. So they made up this hunting trip one afternoon when they were, they hadn't been to school because he was, let's see, when he was killed, they were like 18 and 20, some of the tombstones up there are 19 and 21, I've forgotten. So this was after school, and evidently they had carried this grudge all these years and everything. And of course those boys were still living there. And Uncle Charles had come back from Texas. And so they made up this hunting trip that day, and this Negro boy was one of them that went. And there were 3 or 4 other boys. And this Negro boy kept dropping behind all the time, and Hansbrough was in front. And they were squirrel hunting. I think it was in, Cal was killed in April and Hansbrough was killed in February. Would they been squirrel hunting in February? Well, I think it was squirrel. I'm not sure, but I think it was squirrel. Well, anyway, Hansbrough did get in front. He was a little bit suspicious at first, but he finally did get in front of the Negro boy, got behind him. And they really think that Negro boy shot him. Now, Aunt Jenny always did think that. But Aunt Jenny she had just lost Uncle Charles the 2 years before that, and she just wouldn't push any charges. She said, I just can't do it. So anyway, they made a saddle and carried him out, your forehand, and carried him out. And he was shot, you see, with the gun. Now, the other one was with the pistol and right in the temple, and he just died right away. But Hansbrough died at Waloma. I don't know which room. I think it was in the room that we made the bathroom out of. But anyway, he died at Waloma. They got him down there, and of course they sent for the doctor up at Fincastle, and by the time the doctor got him there, it was just too much. He died just soon after, several hours after the shooting, because the doctor, was on the horse and all that, and it took a good while to get down there, and all that and everything, and there was nothing they could do, So he just died right there at Waloma.
What did they do to the colored boy that shot him?
They didn't do anything, honey. I mean, Aunt Jenny said, no, they didn't press charges or anything. She just said that she just said, I can't go through with it. I mean, she just lost Uncle Charles. And she had one son left, and I think she was just so afraid something was going to happen to him, which it did. And so she just said, I won't press charges. So that's who you're talking about. It was not a Morgan boy.
I guess, anyway.
It was Hansbrough Oots. And he's, now in the Presbyterian church, as you go in the door, there's the Oots marker. And that's Uncle Charles and his mother, Uncle Morgan and his mother and father. Way on back. And the grandfather and grandmother of these children, these boys. So then when Uncle Morgan died, he was the last one, and he was real old, and he was like, that place was filled up. So when the first boy was killed, when Hansbrough was killed, then they were opening up the Methodist cemetery, see, then, and the slices and all that. So Aunt Jenny, they bought a lot there. And Aunt Jenny's is that big monument, and it used to be on all the bulletins. Bob Blanton drew it, and he was an artist. And Bob Blanton drew that thing that used to be on all the Methodist church bulletins. I don't know whether they still have it on there or not, but I think they do. And that's that big monument with the U on it, which is the Oots Monument. And it's right down below, let's see, It's that lot and Otha's lot now, where Jenny and Virginia and Otha are, and then our lot. And you see, then Aunt Jenny had been buried, and there was only 3 places there. Aunt Jenny and the 2 boys. She's in between the 2 boys. When she died in 1940, we buried her in between the 2 boys because that's what she wanted. Well, there are several more places there, and I don't know whether Connie and Beeford are going to take that or not. But there are several more places there in Aunt Jenny's lot. But when Oots died, you see, there were 5 of us. And see, he was just a young man. When he was killed, he was 20. And that was 1926. I was a freshman in high school. And when he died, my mother and father said, no, we want to get a bigger lot because that's only big enough for 2 or 3 people. And if our children, if any more of them die and all our children are here, we want to get a bigger lot. So they bought the lot for Oots C. And then, of course, my mother died first, and she's next. And then my father's next. And then my place is next. And Earl is on the outside. See, I brought Earl back there because that's where he said he wanted to go. He did not want to be in Columbus by his first wife. So I brought him to Virginia when he passed away.
We're talking about Hawthorne Hall.
All right.
Now, Morgan Oots, that his name was Morgan. Was he kin to Morgan that owned Hawthorne Hall?
I don't think so, because in going back now, when I told you that Garrick Steele and the little girl was doing, Christy Fergus was doing the thing to get it on the landmarks. Now, I don't know whether it's ever gotten on there or not, because I never did hear any more from her. And I went down there 2 years ago when I was in Virginia and talked to Garrick and talked to her, and she came back from Hollins and took me down there, and from Sweetbriar. Morgan Oots, when we traced that back, the genealogy on the Oots thing, of course I knew part of it, but she went on to Culpeper. See, they came from Culpeper and Fauquier County, Virginia. And they came on and migrated, and of course they bought Greyledge first, Hill Hall first. And then they came on, and they had 4 places. They had money, and they were the upper crowd. I mean, they were really the people. They weren't the ones that were working, the soil and all that. They had 4 places. They had Belgrove at Hollins, which burned down, and they had put a place on the land, and it's where one of the Lamans, I think, is living now. It's right out from Hollins, the railroad station, on back over there toward Tinker Mountain. And my mother took me up there when I was a child. And then Christy Fergus took me up there 2 years ago. Anyway, that was the 2nd place when they came up from Eastern Virginia. And then the Hansburys and the Ootses came at the same time. And then, it was Hill Hall, Bell Grove, Willoma, and Longwood were the 4 places, which is Rockbridge, where Uncle Hansbury lived, where Lynn Hannah's living now. So they were the 4 places. So you see, in the end, there was an Oots that married a Hansbury, and a Hansbury that married an Oots. You see, the families were intertwined like that. Aunt Jenny, Uncle Charles, was her 2nd cousin, and that's why Grandpa Hansbury, her father, was so against it. Oh, he was bitterly against her marrying at 18 years of age. But, of course, all young ladies were married by 18 then. And she said, well, I love him and I'm going to marry him. And so he knew that he drank and all that and everything, and, it was harem-scam and all that, which it turned out exactly. But Uncle Morgan was his father, and he saw that she had the place to raise those boys because he was so crazy about the grandchildren. And you see, then Uncle Billy lived up where Waverly was, where my mother was raised. Grandmother and Aunt Jenny were the sisters, and they had 2 brothers, Willie and Jim, the Hansbury boys. And Willie is the one who died in the big room at Greyledge. Life is so funny that I always stay in when I'm down there. That's where Willie Hansbury died. And he would have been the youngest person to have ever graduated from VMI at the age of 16. He had a brilliant mind. And Grandpa Hansbury, after the first Validia died, who was my great-grandmother, had to put these boys somewhere in school, and the military schools were where they put them. So he had to get a special permit from the governor of Virginia before Willie could enter VMI as a young boy. And he entered when he was about 12 or 13. Good. And he was going to graduate that next year. And at the age of 16, he came up from VMI. They had 1 month off, the month of July. That's all they give him, I think, even now when you're a cadet. And so he was visiting Grandpa Hansbury and the step-grandmother and all of them at Greyledge. And he was in that big room, and he got sick. He drank out of the spring there, and they all died with typhoid fever. in that day and age. So he died with typhoid fever right there in that big room. And he's buried down there on that place, on Dick Harlow's place. See, they owned all of that through there and everything. Yeah, Kurt Luckady owns it now, and he tells me, Kurt has told me that he will never, where he's buried, and I think one of the others are buried there. He said that he would never plow it under or anything. You know, it's an old family cemetery. You know, that's where they had the families in that day and
Let me
age.
ask you this, then the hand crew, or the Oops, never owned Hawthorne Hall?
No, the Hansbroughs and the Oopses did not own Hawthorne Hall. No, George knows that title.
They weren't kin to Morgan.
Not that I know of. Uncle Morgan Oops is in that title when we were looking that up, and she was going back on all of it, and she went to Culpeper County and Fauquier and all that and everything. There was a Morgan Mazingo, and they came up this way too, so we thought maybe that he had been named were born down there and named, see, they all came from down there.
I heard someone was killed from a place by horseback, you know?
Riding horseback? No, I don't know anything about that. Now, there was a man killed at Willoma who was down there working for them, and you know, we had the old ice houses in that day and age, and they went down and got the ice off the creek. Well, they did that when I was a child, and we put it in the sawdust, you know, in the straw, which kept it all well along because the winters were so cold and everything. And you'd get the ice out, you know, and have whatever ice you wanted for in the spring and all that and everything, and in the summer. And the old ice house was still there when I was a little girl. And anyway, that ice house, well, of course, they built another ice house over it, but that ice house caved in when they were digging it. And there was, I think the man was, no, I believe it was a white man. I think it was a white man. And he died, he was suffocated when they were digging that ice house. How you fix the ice house and all that, and dig out the earth, you know, and all that, and fix it and everything. Of course, the spring house was still down there, when I was a little girl, was still down there at Willoma, where we used to take the milk down there and put it in there with the cold water and stuff when I was a little girl.
Well, who bought the place from Hardy?
Now, George would have to tell you
Yeah,
that, I've forgotten.
I've got the title on it. Mrs. Harvey lived there and died in about 1852 in inventory. But their sale, they started out in a barn and the white people had it.
What were the most expensive
That was
things?
Matthew Hardy, wasn't
No, this was Robert.
it? Robert Hardy.
Yeah. Well, the most expensive thing to raise on the farm was slaves.
Slaves and horses or guns or something, I don't know. Horses, I believe they're horses and there's, but you know, they would say Windsor chairs, and they just had chairs. I never heard people had so many chairs. I what they did was, but you know,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
silver and it was so
the
cheap.
antiques and all
Yeah.
that. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, down in Willoma, when the Civil War was going on, why, when we were children, up there in the thing where they hung the meat, so the soldiers couldn't get to it, you know. See, they were pillaging everything when they were coming through. There used to be spots that would come through, like you'd have to whitewash the ceilings or do the paint the ceilings ever so often, where they said the salt dripped down, you know, the salt dripped down. And they were trying to save something, you know. And out in the garden, they buried the sailboat in the garden. That's the only reason we got anything left, you know. They buried it. And then they did something about marking it, and then they went out and got it up afterwards, dug it up afterwards. Because I've got beautiful silver spoons there in my lockbox. The bank think I should give it away now. I'm 71 Sunday. So I should begin that. I was 71 Sunday. So I should begin there and give that away. I gave all the dishes and all that. Yes, I should, because it don't use been in the lockbox for years and years, and I'd like to see them use it. I'll give it away before I die, and they'll divide it out after I die, and they may have some fussing over it.
Robert Harvey must have been the brother of Matthew.
Yeah, there was.
Is that right? Yeah, Matthew was down there, Harvey place down there, had a toll gate.
No.
Down there, yeah, you read that toll gate down where Dr. Howler, owns down there, that house up on Jim Baker.
Yeah.
I think he'll live in it now, but that's Dr. Howler's house. And the other property he got, and Matthew was well known down there, and Robert was up there. I think he was. He was a little everything.
Robert was in the
Iron mine.
Furnaces.
I think that's the reason he came down here was because of the iron. Iron ironmonge. I don't know where they came from, coming down the vein.
I suspect they came from Scotland.
Oh, Scotland, you think he came in?
I do not know that.
And of course, that story that Bob's got in the Seabed of the Republic, you know, see, that's Grandpa Hansburg. That's my great-grandfather. Get down off your horse, I like. Yeah, I'm the widow Goggles. Come up here. And Greyledge, yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right, because Grandpa
I was
Hansburg.
looking for the widow Gordon. He said, I'm a widow Gordon. He said, I've come for it. And she said,
I light. That's right, a light. That's right. That's right.
Mrs. Penn said she didn't know whether it was Miss Ann's nightcap or whether it was whiskey that killed young Charles Gordon. Because she was 57 or something, and Charles was 21.
No, Goggles was older than her. He was 27. He was 27.
You know this story, don't you, about them going
The
into
prenuptial agreement.
Yeah, they went into prenuptial agreement. There was a fellow by the name of Weaver, William Weaver, who lived down at Buffalo Falls. And he was an ironmonger too, and in Eastern Pennsylvania. And he didn't have any children, as far as I know, but he did have a lot of nieces. And he would get these nieces down there and marry them to those rich Rockbridge County farmers. And he actually tutored in several kids. And anyway, he had this boy by the name of Charles Gordon, his nephew, and he told Charles.
He was in Philadelphia.
Charles, the iron furnace down there at Lower Greyledge, Weaver owned that tract. And Miss Ann owned the Greyledge tract. And he told Charles, he said, now if you go into a prenuptial agreement, whereby if Miss Ann dies first, you inherit Greyledge. And if you die first, she'll inherit the lower tract. Said, I'll give you the lower tract. And that's what they did. Yeah, and
They should die first.
but Charles, unfortunately, he knew that Miss Ann was going to die first, so she was 57 and Charles was 20-something, whatever it was. But Miss Penn said either the nightcap or the whiskey got the best of Charles. So then she was a widow living up there.
That was Aunt Jenny's stepmother, you
That's the
see.
time that Captain Hansbrew came up on a fine steed and came up the hill and was looking for the widow Gordon.
So he had lost his wife, who was the first Validia. See, Grandma had died when little Validia died, when she had the baby. There was a little Validia, but I was the third. I'm only the third.
About 1886, the paper in the front of clerk's office that month. They had a big fight over it, and when Hansbrew died, they had a big squabble over that and stayed in court for 10 years.
See, my mother lived at Greyledge and played under the big tree that's not there any longer, you know. My mother lived right there at Greyledge. The Cartmans and all that, Cartman Gap, they were the king
Now,
people.
the Sisson,
Her name was Anne Skiller Sisson.
her aunt, her uncle, two Hansbrew Baxter, lived there where Dick Harlow lived, up there at the Cartmore Gap or Bowen Gap, they call it.
Well, they were the Cartman brothers, weren't they?
Wait a minute. Old Baxter, and they had this niece, whose mother was their sister, that found in Sisson, West Virginia. They built this house in 1842 to 45. They built this house for the niece and Skiller and Sisson.
Skiller, that's where Skiller and Thrasher gets his name. Right. Anne Skiller and Sisson was her name.
I know better than
Well, it's really something, isn't it? Life is really something, I'm telling you. I just wish, I'm not a writer, I wish somebody would write because I'm not going to be here too much longer. They better get busy. Better get busy and put in stories and everything, you know.
Now, what was your original question, George? When you did what?
We were looking for the ghost of Hawthorne Hall.
Betsy is looking for a ghost.
Ghost
For a ghost?
of Hawthorne Hall.
Greyledge, we'll give him his aunt.
No, Miss Ann didn't live in that house. You can't give her Miss Ann, my great-great-grandmother, whoever she great step-grandmother.
And Bertha, you know, they had, she had some gifts, and the man got sick. She said, Bertha said, I appreciated you coming in and looking about me last night. She said, what do you mean? He said, well, I thought it was you, so some lady came in there and looked to see how I was doing. That's my thing. Well, you can go walking around that bitch anything.
Well,
One over my house.
I never have heard her. I've been down there, and I'm a great step-granddaughter, but I never have heard her. Maybe she's afraid to come and see
Can't
me.
bother you. Doesn't bother family.
Maybe she's afraid to come and see me.
My wife was sleeping, Gorgas had a stairs down the back of the house, separate entrance. And he was in this room up there, and we did his drink. And there was a cabinet, a bedside cabinet with a door on it, bedside table with a door on it. My wife was up there when she had the first Kelly. And she woke up one night, she heard that door squeak. That's it. Back and woke up again. And it squeaked again. It just so happened that my wife had a bottle of liquor in there. And I'm sure that Gordon
Was that?
Was that?
had wanted another one before he stayed still.
Oh.
Think about
Well,
what's
Sam-
I've got the Charles K. Gorgas. Charles K. Gorgas was his name. And I've got the Charles K. Gorgas silver spoons. They in the lockbox, yeah, when we divided up the things.
Another coincidence on that is the street that we live on in Florida.
But I live on in Florida is Gorgas Street.
Is that
Gorgas. And I've often wondered, and I haven't had a chance to, but I am going to try to find out when that little town was laid out. Were there some Philadelphia people there? Because he was from Philadelphia.
Well, Charles went on down there when he got through Greyledge. He went on down to Norfolk.
I never thought that is strange, really.
Well, he went on to Norfolk.
Yeah, I believe he did.
How about another drink?
He
Mr.
could have, yeah.
No,
How
thank
about
you.
don't
No,
you want a little
that's
tease up?
fine.
Little tease up?
certainly enjoyed
We
this.
have. We gotta go.
Well, I hope you got your story here now, George.
You want overtime.
You got this thing going?
Yeah.
Hope you got your story. Hope you got your story, Betsy.
Pull it off.